Welcome to the Ben Wood Johnson podcast. You can visit Dr. Johnson's blog at benwoodpost.com. Dr. Johnson's works can be found at drbenwoodjohnson.com. You can also support Dr. Johnson on Patreon, the link to which is in the description. Hey, welcome back to the Ben Wood Johnson podcast. Today is January the 20th, 2020. In other words, it's 1/20/2020. Amazing, right? I have a real treat for you today. We are going to be talking about time. Now, time and philosophy are intertwined. You cannot talk about time without philosophizing. In other words, you cannot talk about human ontology without looking into the being over time, because the being changes over time. The being transcends over time. So it is important to talk about time. So today I am not going to be talking live. I am going to play a pre-recorded session, which I recorded many years ago about time. And this particular segment sets the stage for the concept and how I am going to link time and philosophy and the notion of beingness. So without further ado, let us delve right into it. Now, I have been eating some nuts. Maybe what I'm about to say is going to make me look like or sound like the nuts I just ate. But I know I'm not cuckoo in the head. As I'm driving on the road, leaving Villanova University, and I'm looking at the highway, West 30, going home, and there's this big billboard behind me. I just passed it, but as I just passed it, it sends a big light that reflects on my vehicle. And since my moonroof is on, I am able to see myself. But the funny thing is that I just passed that billboard. If I just passed that billboard, why is it still shining? Is the billboard shining now? I could assume that it is. Is the billboard always shining? Possibly. Now I'm passing the Express Ends sign, and I just passed it. The question I'm asking, is that sign still there? Well, I can say yes, that it is still there. As I'm driving my car about 57 miles an hour, well, 52 miles an hour, I realized that there's plenty ahead of this on this road. I just don't know it. And there's plenty that I left behind. When I went to Villanova University, I did not go beyond Lancaster Street and Ethan Avenue. So I don't know anything beyond that point. But I do know after Ethan Avenue what's coming. I do know after I left Ethan Avenue, I am going to see the gas station on the right. I do know that if I keep going, I'm going to see the traffic lights. And when I keep going, I'm going to see the exit, which is going to take me to the road I need to take to come home. So when I look at my past, I can say with certainty that that past is there. If I were to make a U-turn and go back to Lancaster Avenue or Ethan Avenue to Villanova, I would certainly see the same thing that I saw when I passed through that road this morning on my way to Villanova. And when I'm going back home again, I will still see that billboard shining through. In a sense, both the past, the present, I would be so bold to say the future, are collided in this world that I am in. And this world that I am in right at this moment, my past is there. But the question one must ask is this: is it my past that I left behind? Is this my past? If I were to go back to Villanova University and pass through Lancaster Avenue, Ethan Avenue, will I still be able to see the same thing that I saw today? Will I be able to see the things that I am certain that I will see today? In a sense, the answer would be yes. In that sense, I know the future. But the question one must ask is this: is this really my future? Is this really my future? Is the time that I am sitting in this car, driving home, is this my present? Am I in this car right now? From a metaphysical standpoint, the answer would be yes. Then there are more than one ways to look at the world then. Because obviously something is missing. If my past is always there, my present is determined by me, and my future is already there, I just have to choose the road that is going to take me to the future that I choose or chose. Is it a future? Is it because it is there? Is it my past? Or are the things that are on this road, are they part of the present? Are they part of the past? Or are they part of the future? Whose future is it? Whose past is it? Whose present is it? Mine? Theirs? How do I know this is present? How can I tell this is my future? How do I know this is the past? The answer to these questions are not easy. And the reason these questions are hard to answer, it is because what is understood about life? What is understood about present? And what is understood about the future are natural events, natural occurrences in nature. What do you mean by natural events, Woodler? What do you mean by natural occurrences, Woodler? To answer this question, we have to look back, or at least we have to understand what has been understood about this world. What is understood about this world is based on what people can understand about this world. It is not hard facts. It is not because it can be proven for another human being to understand that it is a fact. A fact is a fact when it is a fact for every entity within nature. A fact cannot be a fact when it is a fact for those who understand it as a fact. What human beings understand as facts are not necessarily facts in nature. Presently, the whole world is based on the notion or based on the theories elaborated by prominent scientists and scholars about the notion of everything can happen within the context of certain natural laws. However, among the natural laws, there are certain selections. And those selections are based on a certain predisposed human understanding of what the world around is. In other words, what human beings understand about human beings is only what human beings can understand about human beings. That doesn't necessarily mean that what they understand about human beings is what there is to understand about human beings. What it means is that it is simply what it is that they can understand. That does not make what they know a fact. It probably makes it a fact within the confound of what human beings can appreciate as such. But in and of itself does not make it a fact in nature. Because in nature, facts is an elusive concept. In nature, facts do not exist. The concept of fact does not exist in nature. In fact, if there were such a thing in nature called fact, there would be no nature. Because what makes nature is the constant evolution, a constant moving forward. Therefore, there cannot be no fact in nature. And if there cannot be no fact in nature, there cannot be a past in nature. Past is a concept that nature does not recognize. Because in order for fact to exist, there ought to be something that is permanently there. There ought to be a permanent fixture, be it in nature or elsewhere within nature. In order for that to exist, there ought to be that permanent fixture. Without it, there would be no fact. We can all agree that what makes a fact in nature, or what makes a fact as per a human understanding of facts in nature, is erroneously understood, because nature does not have any facts. What is a fact? A fact, as defined, is a substance, an entity, metaphysically possessive, present in the being, both flesh and in spirit. Without those compositions, a fact cannot be established. In order for a fact to exist, there ought to be a physical being coupled with an abstract version of that being, an illusion of that being in itself. In other words, the presence of the human being, the presence of the being, and the possibility of its absence. That's what makes a fact. For instance, when I look at a person, I can say that this is a person that is standing before me, simply because that presence is manifested in two ways. The first way I know there is a human being before me is because there is a human being in flesh And there's also the possibility that there is no human beings in front of me. In other words, the presence and the absence of the human being, that is what constitutes the existence or the presence of the human being. And that's what constitutes the fact that a human being is standing before me. Okay? When I look at a tree or a post or a sign standing on the road that I'm driving right now, it is a fact, because as I look at that post, I can see it in the physical being. And the mere fact that it exists from a physical standpoint creates the potential that it might not exist. And the fact that it might not exist makes it a fact. So in and of itself, a fact is a presence, but it is a presence with absence. In other words, there can be no fact without the possibility that something that is there cannot be there at the same time. Okay? Within that context, one must understand that in nature there can be no fact. Because a fact in nature is a snapshot of nature, of an entity in nature, at a particular time, space, and geography. And that snapshot of that entity, that is what makes that entity the entity that it is. Therefore, every entity in nature is only present when they're not absent. And if the presence of the entity only exists when the entity is not absent, that entity cannot exist in the past nor in the future. Because there is no such thing as future in nature, as there is no such thing as a past in nature. What nature is a bust. It's a bust of things, of presence. And that presence that is constantly there, that's what nature is. And every entity within nature is part of that presence. And the possibility for the absence of that presence is what makes nature what it is. In other words, in order for nature to be and continue being, nature has to constantly be or trying not to be. In other words, nature cannot be unless nature evades the possibility of not being. In order to be, that being must avoid not being. Because that's the difference between being. If you don't have the possibility for not being, then there is no being. Okay? The underpinnings of the world as it is today is based on the notions that there are facts, and those facts can be seen and understood, appreciated within the confines of natural laws. For instance, a law of gravity. The law of gravity states the place and the behavior or the manner in which an entity within nature behaves. And that's that particular characteristic of the environment in which every entity on earth are obliged to abide by creates a fact, or a fact that is palpable, a fact that is visible, a fact that is tangible, and according to men will always be visible, will always be tangible, will always be there. But nature does not see it that way. The current understandings of human beings about themselves are based on the notion that there are two presence in the world. There are three presence in the world. A presence that is understood as a present in the past, a present in time, in the present in the moment, and a presence in the future. Those three presents cannot cohabit within the confine of nature, because nature itself does not have a presence in the past as understood, a presence in the future. Nature only has a present at the moment. Every moment in nature is a moment in nature, and it is also the moment in nature. Nature does not have another moment. Nature does not have a moment that awaits it somewhere. Okay. And when you look at the whole concept of how people understand reality, this concept is wrong. Because what people understand about themselves, what people understand about others, is based on the notion that there are three presences in the world. Those three presences can be used to explain each other. The past can be used to explain the present. The present can be used to understand the past. The past can determine the future. The future can dictate the present. The present can inform the future. And those three relationships between the three presents in nature as created by human beings are erroneous, because there is no such a thing in nature. In nature, there is no past. In nature, there is no past, and there can be no future in nature, rather. The reason being is that nature in itself is not based on a point to another point. Nature is not based on two entities. Because in order for present to exist and past to exist, there ought to be at least two tangible entities. Okay? And those two tangible entities must be a point A and a point B. In the middle of point A and point B, there is a point C. And that point C is the one that is going to determine point A, at the same time informing point B. How can point C be before point B? This rationale does not make any sense in nothing that is visible in nature. In fact, everything in nature suggests the opposite of this rationale. Everything in nature suggests that there can be no 2-point relationships in nature. There's only one point of reference in nature. And that point of reference in nature is the present moment and its mirror image. And the mirror image of the present is the possibility for the absence of the present. In other words, the being is only a being when there's a possibility that it cannot be. And the possibility for the being not to be is incumbent upon the being to be. Therefore, there cannot be a possibility that a being can be somewhere other than where it is being. And it is also impossible for a being to be understood based on what it used to be. Because what the being used to be has nothing to do with what the being is at the moment. What a being used to be is just what a being used to be. It is not the past of the being. It is not a history of the being. It is simply what the being used to be, as captured by the essence of time. And time in nature is what it is. Time in nature. Okay? In order for a being in nature to burst out of being, it has to have the possibility of not being. And the possibility of not being is incumbent upon many things, one of which is the possibility of being. When you look at time, when you look at everything in nature, when you look at everything in the being, you see that the possibility for a being to be other than what it is not possible. Okay? It must be understood that a being can only be only because there's a possibility of not being. Okay, I'll come back to that in a minute. I'm going to put some gas in the car.